So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Pan-Afri Connect podcast. And this evening, again, we're going to be discussing on the development of Africa and African perspective. And on this pod, we have, our great comrades. We have Comrade Yomi, we have Comrade Additional, and we have Comrade Oshola. We welcome everyone to this wonderful podcast. We're going to be looking at, you know, why are we underdeveloped, right? We're going to be looking at different aspects why we, as Africans, we've not been able to evolve. You know, we can see, the Western world evolving in different ways. We can see, the Asian world evolving in different ways. Why is it that we as Africans, we've not been able to have rights to our own identity, right to our own land, right to our own culture, right to our own spirituality, you know, and that's what we're going to be looking at in tonight's podcast. And we have Comrade Yomi, we have Comrade Additional, and Comrade Oshola on the podcast today. I'll be moving the mic to Comrade Yomi to give us a brief view of, why has Africa not really developed? Why has Nigeria, because we're in Nigeria, why has Nigeria not really developed? When we look at, the world stage, why is it that, we're still left behind? In your own view, why has African underdeveloped? So, Comrade Yomi, if you want to chime in on this before I move the mic to Additional. So, Yomi, you have the floor. Yomi, you there available? I say you just pause.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you right now.
Okay. I'm trying to fix my connection, my mic. Sorry. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Everyone can hear me clearly.
Your voice is low. I dey struggle to hear you.
My voice is low, Abi.
Yeah.
How about now?
You feel increase and small.
Yomi video the
Make I
work. I'm
increase
not saying video the work. Yomi, if you
Oh,
just
you dey hear
drop
me
and join
now?
in again. Yeah, if you drop and join in again so that we can now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll do that.
All right. So for me though, why Comrade Yomi joins back into this Pan-Afri Connect podcast. Okay, Comrade Yomi don't join. So Comrade Yomi, I beg, maybe give us your own view because it is very important. We want to get your own view because you're talking about tradition, art, and culture. You know, the reason why we're talking about this is we want to look at it in different view so that like we always see so that our listeners can really understand this is a learning process for everyone. So you're looking at our underdevelopment from our tradition, you're looking at it from our arts and culture. Why do you feel that these are the ingredients why we've not been able to develop ourselves over time?
All right. Thank you. So okay. My name is Yomi. So I'll be giving my own views on our topic today, on the development of the underdevelopment of Africa and African perspective. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. So because of our time, I'll just quickly go through our history because I'll be speaking from the angle of our art and culture and also our tradition, how we've been able to live through our traditions and also live by our culture, and also how the Europeans, how they give us their own agenda, and how we've been living by their own constitution, not the constitution we know, because as at 15th century, Africa and also an Asia continent, these both continents have been developing self, have been developing on their own gradually. They've been developing on their own self. You understand? So they govern their self, among themselves. So now it is something that we can't even see, we can't even see the beauty of African culture in most of the things we do in Africa today. Because even though if we check in our education system, you understand, because everything starts from learning. Because in Africa, for you to be able to say, okay, you are an African, you should be able to understand the origination of African. For you to be able to say you're a real African man, you understand. So you really need to be able to tell us why you are an African, why African is special. Like for instance, when you go to Chinese, when you go to China, when you get there, you find them speaking mostly their language. And even though if you get to their schools, if you get to their church, if you get to where they do their tradition stuff, even though in Indians, so they do their own thing based on their culture. And we all know that both religion, both this Christian and Muslim was brought. Christian and Muslim was brought to Africa. Then we should know that this was brought to Africa, and this is not an African religion. So Africa has its own traditional culture of doing its own things. So we really need to understand this first, before we start talking about our tradition. Because what is African tradition? Their tradition based on their originated from their community. So we'll be speaking on our own tradition here in Nigeria, because we won't be speaking for other states in African nations because of our time. So in Yoruba land in Nigeria, which is a country in Africa, so we have different kind of tradition in Africa, which is in Nigeria, in Yoruba land. We have a lot of traditions. Like we have people who worship Shango. We have people who do who worship the Oduduwa. So the Oduduwa, which is the first ancestors that we all Africa recognized here in Nigeria. So a lot of this, a lot of cultures that come with this our tradition has been forgotten and has been erased by the colonists. So because the way we've placed ourselves, and also the way they've been able to capture us, and also how we've been able to, to fight our way out of this trap. So it is necessary for us to note that Africa has its own tradition. So a lot of people still practice this tradition despite all issues going on in Africa. We have people practicing Ifa. We have people who is into Shango, who is into I don't know. We have a lot of them. We have Obatala, so like that. So we have people who like who really follow the trace of these ancestors. So whereby we're talking about all these traces of ancestors, like people who really made African the great. Understand? All the traces have been erased. A lot of histories remarks are not even well proper compute together. So we can't even get a proper reading of our history whenever we want. So a lot has been cut off. So we just really need to bring everyone together, and then also try to enlighten and also put this out there for people. So just for them to know that Africa has its own way of doing its own things. Not we bombarding our ideas with all these Western ideologies, doing their own things. We have a lot of disruption in church, in mosques today, but nobody is even talking about the tradition, which is our originated tradition, our main culture, which we've been practicing for a very long time in Africa. Because based on my own experience, I started experiencing African tradition culture as at year 2011 in Lagos, when they are doing all this Eyo. If you've been to Eyo festival before, you should know how all these how this Eyo festival has been organized, how they used to organize it every year. And it has been something that we can't even say this thing is what proud of anymore in Africa, and it's something they really cherish all across the world. Most of African tradition has been cherished. It's been cherished, especially most by the Brazilian. The Brazilian has most of our things. They has, if you check at some Brazilian tribe, you will definitely find a trace of African tradition in them, because they understand this, and we also have to understand this, which is African tradition, our arts and culture. How we come to existence, how they see how the Europeans sees all these things, how they really just want to bring everything down. We shouldn't just allow that and then just feel this is something we really need to be discussing about every time, and how to really paint the picture of African tradition, our arts and culture, how we're just going to put everything there back. Because if we look, even though in our film production in Africa, a lot of energy why not even put when we're doing something like we have this movie that I think came out last year, which is it not 1960? No, the one this guy did at Oyo. I don't know. It's a very it talks about our history by I don't know. Someone should remind me. This guy most wanted. I don't know. Afolayan something. So a lot of people put a lot of energy, to get all this kind of work done, but we don't really have much hands. We don't really have much people, talking about our tradition, our culture, really bringing this to the space, where people can really see this, and then talked about it, and then where we discuss how we're going to build our tradition, and then bring our culture to the space where people can say, okay, this is African people, this is how they're doing their own thing. Because Christian and Muslim, to me, religion are force, and a lot of propaganda has been revolving around this what's it called, these religions. So we just have to be very careful. I'm not saying anybody should not do Christian or Muslim. We just have to be very careful. And also, as an African, we really need to understand our origin. So I think I should just drop it here and give a chance for another caller to chime in. Thank you.
I appreciate this contribution, Komeyomi. You telling us what we need to do. We have to understand who we are. Understand that even the religion we have right now is an imperialist religion. It's a colonialist religion. And, you made mention of, people that worship, Oduduwa, who is, our first ancestors. When we look at our tradition, we appreciate, people that have come before us. But right now, because we're living in this imperialist, religion, it's like, most of our ancestors are even forgotten. So we don't even we are cut off from who we truly are, and that's what we're trying to do right now. looking at our underdevelopment from that view of an African. We can never develop if we don't respect people that have come before us. Because one day also we're gonna leave. And people also, if we don't, get this right, people also are gonna also forget us. So it's very important that we let our listeners understand, we're trying to make history, right here. So that people can, get to understand that, our culture, our tradition, our arts, there's just so many riches, in our culture and tradition, because it's like, we are so imbibed with the Western way of living. And that's why it's like, we're in total confusion. And thanks once again, Comrade Yomi, for this wonderful point. And I hope, our listeners, once, they get to listen to this podcast, they can do research on their culture and tradition. They can go back into history, understand, what happened. Why is it that, we have so many imperialists, religion right now, where these people just so loving that they give us their own religion, or did they use force? For us, we understood that, they use force, to bring in their own religion into our own reality. So it's very important points, my great comrade Yomi, is, letting our listeners understand. Do more research about yourself. Know who you are. Know your roots. And then, we can get to even build from there. We can get to, paint Africa, in a very, very beautiful way. Thanks once again, Comrade Yomi, for that. Comrade Rebel. Okay, our great comrade Oshola, yeah. You want to chime in on this before Comrade Rebel go?
Yes, precisely. So Comrade Yomi, thank you so much for that education. It was really enlightening, right? Before I joined this podcast, I was looking at Sean Kutzi's Instagram, right? And he posted a story around some people burning a witch, right? They burnt a witch to ashes. Like, I don't know when it happened, but there's a story around it on IG today, right? And it just shows that there is a total disconnect between we as African people and our tradition and our culture, right? We have so much. I think total disconnect is not even the word, right? We are now in opposite direction, right? The fact that people brought a religion to us and we are killing our people that are conserving and preserving our own culture. We are killing them and we are seeing them in a negative light because we are trying to uphold the religion that has not given us anything since it has come, right? It has come with slavery, with trade, right? Unprofitable trade that only benefits them, right? The Arabian trade system, the Western trade system, and all of that. It has not benefited us as African people, but we will still hold on to it and kill the last of the dying few that is conserving our culture and our tradition, right? So it really made me feel so sad. And Comrade Yomi has already talked about it. What I think we can also do going forward is maybe as a continuity of the podcast for our listeners, right? We make sure that we sort of have a story around the origin of some of this our culture and tradition. So Obatala worshippers, what's the uniqueness in that mode of worship, right? Shango worshippers, Ogun worshippers, Amadioa, right? What is the uniqueness? We need to start to bring a form of new identity, right? The negativity around our culture is so bad that we need to start to tell the people that, oh, this culture, this particular way of worshiping, this is why they are doing it that way, right? So that in some ways the people can connect to it and start seeing it as what it is and not the negative cloud that the imperialist has made it to be, right? So wonderful points, my comment. I mean, thank you again for that.
Thank you, Comrade Oshola, for that. You were kind of breaking up, but we're able to get what you're trying to let us understand that, in our next podcast, we can start, appreciating our culture, appreciating, our tradition, right? Bringing the Obatala worshippers, bringing the Ifa worshippers, let us understand their own story, right? That's how we can really get to enjoy, right? Because, we are diverse people and we are beautiful people. So thanks once again, Comrade Oshola, for that. And really appreciate all this point because, this is a stepping stone, right? We are here, telling about who we are. We're here telling about, the riches of what our ancestors have done. We're able to contribute with our culture and tradition, to many civilizations. Even the founder of China, the one that did the revolution, uh, Mao Mao, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? He came to Africa to learn about how we're living. So we as Africans, we deserve so many credits for many civilization that is out there. So why is it that there's a reverse change in psychology, to our own people, because we've been able to accept a foreign religion, accept a foreign way of life, which is not even working for us at the end of the day. So thanks once again, my great comrade Amoshola. So Comrade Rebe, you won't give us, the step-by-step process, right? You won't give us, okay, waiting really don't happen, the stages that we've, come to, to this reality with our underdevelopment. You won't make us understand. So I'll just quickly move the mic to you so that at least, make our listeners understand the different stages while we've been underdeveloped from your own perspective.
Thank you, Comrade J, and every other comrades on this call. I hope I'm audible enough. Hello.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you. This on the development of Africa, if you want really look we go look back in the time in the 15th and 16th century, when the European kings sent their spies, what they call explorers, to the new world, as they call them, to Africa. And these spies were these colonial agents that were sent down. They were amazed to see plenty of wild animals in the plains of Africa, abundant wealth, a well-organized African society with highly divine spiritual people who were living under the Ubuntu principle with no poverty. And as a result, these spies gathered a report about what they have seen and sent it back to their so-called kings. And since Africans are the original people of the universe, this means that they are the most spiritual people on the planet. And European peoples, they understood this very well, that they can't colonize a people that is stuck in their powerful African God and spirituality. So the European kings, they can't start to send brainwashers, indoctrinators, and their religious thugs, what they call called missionaries to Africa. And the primary aim of these spiritual colonizers was to indoctrinate the fake white divinity and black evil, to indoctrinate our people the doctrines into the African minds, so the African people can neglect their powerful black god of the ancestors for the powerless European fairy tale, sorry, their idols, the white god generally. And after they brainwash African people into their church system, the missionaries started sending reports back to Europe, telling their kings that Africans are now groomed into obedient and defenseless spiritual slaves, ready to be exploited and colonized. Then they started sending guns and gun traders and alcohol to Africa, and they deliberately sent guns to African kingdoms to give them more power to conquer another kingdoms. And this gun trade was orchestrated by the Europeans to encourage the looting of African people and capturing more prisoners of war, what they call slave. So on the other hand, the alcohol was to poison the subconscious minds of African kings and queens. African kings and queens became drunkards. As a result, their thinking level come low, and their thinking level became low, and they are not what is best for their societies anymore. They can start to capture their fellow African brothers in other neighboring towns or cities in order to trade for more alcohol and guns. African kings started dishing out land to these foreigners. And these are traders that they send mercenaries along with them. Mercenaries are always with them, and these are mercenaries go into the wildlife of Africa and do as they like, destroying the wild nature, the wild animals with their hunting rifles. Coming back to my point, after the European kings saw the abundant wealth in our land and the rate at which it is being shipped to their land to make them also wealthy, like the way we see them now, they started sending their the settlers, as they call them, to occupy African land. And these settlers also were greedy people. They were grabbing and dispossessing and stealing from African people. So, lastly, European king then sent trained soldiers, the agents, miners, and administrators to put the colonization agenda into the entire African practicality. However, Europeans were so greedy so much that they won't get the ownership of Africa. They started fighting themselves. Even before coming across a place called Africa, they were already fighting themselves, among themselves, killing themselves. After they can't see Africa, they can't say, okay, you wait. And that's what brings the Berlin Conference. Say, you wait, see this Africa. Me, all of us go chop there. Food day. So they started implementing artificial borders. We can be the African countries we know today. And then do you wonder why black people are the most self-hating people on the planet? Do you wonder why we lost our identity and culture? Do you now know why the European countries have largest gold reserves in the world? Despite the fact, say they don't get any gold mines. Now, because these Europeans have systematically indoctrinated, poisoning and manipulating African minds. European and America have been looting Africa for centuries. These are the guys behind the systematic engineering of poverty, virus, and the underdevelopment of Africa. So the thing be say, Europe no like us, Arab no like us, America no love us at all, and the Chinese also, no one loves us. They are just interested in us because of our natural resources. So I think it's time for Africa to wake up. Africa, wake up. The Chinese are also coming in the same manner too, the way the Europeans came. Might just leave it there. Thank you.
Excellent point, Comrade Rebel. I will just make Comrade Oshola, chime in because we get about 9 more minutes. So, Comrade
I have a
Oshola,
question.
okay. Make Comrade Oshola go, then Comrade Yomi.
All right, my comment. Nice, great input, right? I really do not have much to say. You really done justice to that. Our first contact with the Europeans, the strategy that they deployed, right, which was firstly to make sure that we lost our connection with our spirituality, right? Gave us some sort of false spirituality, and when they knew that our guards were down and we were in a lost, we did not identify ourselves again, right? Started coming with settlers, came with traders, and then eventually came to fully colonize us, right? After the Berlin Conference, right, which totally threw us all away, right? So that was at the point where we were lost. They had divided us, and then they started coming in to like take the loot. It was called the Scramble for Africa, right? It's a crazy concept at the time. So yeah, great understanding of this. Like I said earlier, right? We really need to maybe start to put like names, right? Let our listeners understand who these evil perpetrators are. Let us talk about the likes of King Leopold. Let's talk about the Macpherson. Let's talk about the Lugards, right? Let's put a name to them and say, oh, in so period, this was the person that singularly did this, right? Let them know, let Africans know who their enemies are. The more we are trying to make sure that our culture is great and telling people about our culture and uplifting our culture, we need to start to put those people back down and making sure that we are saying the fact that, okay, this is our enemy, this person, this company still exists today. This was the merger that they did, and this was how they were able to acquire this. And this company still exists today with us, right? We need to start to make sure that our listeners understand this thing, right? Because the more we speak this fact, the more we speak this truth to power, the more the people are getting conscious, right? Comrade J has just shown us a book which really does justice to most of these things, right? Comrade J, if you can show us again what Britain did to Nigeria, right? I've forgotten the author because it's been so long since I saw the book. So, Comrade J will help us with the author and all of that. Great job, Comrade Additional. Great job, Comrade.
The author of the book is Mark Solon. Comrade Yomi, kindly ask your question.
Sure. Thank you, Comrade Additional, for that wonderful remarks. You understand? It's not more of like a question, but Comrade Oshola has already said it. We really need to let these people understand what we're talking about. I think it's time for us to start breaking all these things down, because what I get from Comrade Additional's point, a lot, it speaks about a lot, talking about our century, the relationship in the first place, how they came to, spy and then, oversee the land and all that. So I think we should just, on our net podcast, we should really, dive into what Comrade Additional has said. We should look into the deliberate force relationship. This is like a deliberate because he said they've been exploiting, for for centuries. They've been exploiting Africa. You understand? So we really need to talk about this, deliberate force relationship, the Europeans, the colonies, the force relationship they portray, to us as African, and also why, we find ourselves, in this kind of situation, and then, we're trying to find our way out. And also it seems something unachievable, but it's not to us. It's not. It's something we can achieve. So we really need to talk about this, because a lot of people will be looking at it from from an angle like, this is unachievable. Why are we talking about this? And then why are we not even talking about the, like, as Comrade Oshola has said, we really need to identify these people. We really need to talk about some, if we're talking about the tradition and religion, and also we should be talking about what Comrade Additional has also said. We should, put that as one topic, then dive into it, because I believe it's not something they can grab just like that. So that's just my say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Yomi, for that, and thank you, Comrade Oshola, for those wonderful points. Thank you, Comrade Rebel. So I will just quickly end the podcast with this: that we need to be in control of our land, right? As much as we've been able to break it down from our history, we need to be in control of our land. We need to be in control of our resources, because at the end of the day, the colonizers came for our land, came for our resources, and they gave us, their own ideology. And that's why we've not been able to really develop ourselves. How can we be as a nation, not utilizing our resources? How can we have this so many land and our people are still hungry? That's why we're talking about the underdevelopment. How can we as a nation, have all these so many, various and diverse, resources under our ground, and we can't produce the final product on our land, So we really need to understand this, as much as we're giving, our history of, what has happened, the relationship that's, brought us, where we are right now. How do we move forward? We have to be in control of our land. We have to have a super state. That's why we're talking about the underdevelopment of Africa. We're trying to connect Africa together. So we need a super state that is going to fight external forces that want to, come into our land again. We can't make the same mistake our ancestors made previously. That's why we're looking at ownership of our land, ownership of our resources, and we also have to go back to who we are, understanding our tradition and also appreciating ourselves. Like I said in the last podcast, we are Africans and we are proud to be Africans. So I will end the podcast here. Thanks once again, Comrade Oshola. Thanks once again, I'm Rebel. And thanks once again, Comrade Yomi. So we'll meet next time. Aluta Continua.
Victoria
Proof
Asata.
after.
Thank you. So